Well, greetings, super friends. Welcome to World's Finest, brought to you by the Comic Collectors Guild. I am your host. My name is Jake. You guys know me as the Superman. And joining me, rocking my shield, is Lee Lawson, the Batman himself. I appreciate the love, sir. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I am wearing your shield today because we are here to talk about, guess what, my friend? Your top stories. That's right. We are sharing with the
Yeah.
audience all of our favorite, five, from our point of view, five favorite Superman stories of all time.
Yeah, obviously we did the Batman one. That was a lot of fun. Now it's my turn to get a little shine in the light, and we're going to be breaking down these top Superman stories. This is, the OG original superhero. The one that's been around. I mean, he's been around for 80 plus years now. So there is a lot of stories that we have to pull from. But these are just five that we find interesting. These are not going to be in any particular order or anything like that. And obviously, there are plenty more. But one thing I think it'd be kind of fun to talk about before we actually reveal our five. For you, what makes, because obviously Batman is so grounded. He's a normal guy. What to you makes a good Superman story? Which makes it earning you on your list? Is there particular things that you've noticed as a trend, like this really makes it a Superman a good story?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's it's almost funny because I'm going to steal what you said about, Batman being a grounded hero. And I think a lot of it has to do with stories making Superman a grounded hero,
Yeah,
as opposed to being, the guy who could do it all and is not unrelatable. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So I think this, to me, some of the best stories are some that even portrayed him more human.
Yeah,
If that
no,
makes
I'm 100% with you. That's basically my answer is, when you're dealing with a guy who's essentially a god, it you have to find ways to make him relatable and give him real world problems. And there's not many times where he goes toe to toe, and you're like, oh, he might be in trouble. And this one, like, what's he gonna do? So I like when he's tested
Yeah,
in different ways, and he's a great superhero to do that off of. And some of the amazing stories where even when there's other characters involved, he's kind of at the center of it and able to kind of be the heartbeat of that story. So
yep,
I agree with what you said. And I think even here recently, like, it's not on my list, but like the Doomsday Clock, basically he inspires Dr. Manhattan to realize that there's hope in the world, that there's, this light, that is, the world is not doomed, and it enables Dr. Manhattan to go back and reverse a lot of the bad things that have happened in DC over the years, and even create a version of himself, named Clark, with the little Dr. Manhattan. So, that's just a recent example of how they used him on a symbol kind of base to
yeah.
inspire others, where hope and light really shines through. And that's really the heart of Superman at the end of the day.
It totally is. Being a Kryptonian, being somebody who's not even from Earth, he is totally a lot of the times more human than most
Yeah.
humans are. You know what I mean? As
Yeah.
far as the way his beliefs are and the way he carries himself and things like that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually, and they actually use the frame in Justice League is, a lot of times Superman's actually more human than Batman. Like, he's
Yeah.
gone through having a normal job and falling in love with somebody and trying to have a family in some iterations and having parents, and he has like this normal life. And really, to me, that's what's special about Superman is, the guy is a god, he can do anything, but at the end of the day, he kind of just wants to be a normal guy and grounds himself, which is really amazing. Because if you think about how many people would just abuse that power, but at the end of the day, he's a good guy.
It's all he strives for, man, is to be more human. And now, all of that being said, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic to see some Superman fisticuffs go down.
Oh yeah,
That attracts me to a great Superman story as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
To see a battle that other people really can't do other than
Yeah,
Superman.
yeah. And that's kind of funny, when you're kind of the bar and there's this few moments where, maybe the heat vision eyes start popping up and you're like, oh snap, like this dude's toast. So
Oh yeah,
let's just dive into this. We'll dive into each one individually, but just an
sure.
overview. What are your five Superman stories?
Sure. I'll got Superman for all seasons is on my list. I've
Nice.
got For the Man Who Has Everything, which is a fantastic one that was told in one of the Superman annuals. I've got Death of Superman. I've also got followed up with a story called Brainiac.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you know that it was actually based on an animated movie. We'll get into that as you said. And then The Man of Steel.
very nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are my five.
this is cool. So we actually have four out of the five are different stories. So this is going to give us a lot to talk about. Although all of those stories are fantastic. I was actually debating a couple of those going on my list. I went with All-Star Superman for mine, Death of Superman, which we have together, Kingdom Come, which really is more of a multiple character story, but really Superman's the heart of that. Last Son of Krypton, and then Red Sun, which is an Elseworld story,
Oh yeah.
which is kind of cool. So let's just dive into. We'll start with Death of Superman first, since we have that. It's similar, and I would even clump together the Reign of the Supermen on top of Death of the Family or Death of Superman. It's kind of one big story, but you were kind of at the heart of when that came out. So what was that like when the Man of Steel died?
I'm not sure if I'm a little slighted. That's a little
No,
slight. That
I
right
might
at the heart of that
I
as the story came
I
out.
was 4 when that came out, so I can
I was
relate.
six. I was
You
six
were
anyway.
6, yeah.
No, yeah, no. That was a huge thing. We've referenced it a couple times on previous shows about what a huge mark that made. I mean, that hit pop culture. That was all over. It was on the news. I mean, this was a big deal. When this story came out. So, I mean, outside of this, just some story that was big in the comic book world that people in the comic book stores were talking about, everybody was talking about this back in 1993 when this went down. And so, to your point, it was a huge splash. But a lot of good, I mean, obviously bad things came out of this with the death of Superman. But really, this was a great starting point for a lot of other stories that outside of this. But it was fantastic to finally see an awesome story between Doomsday. I mean, a crazy character that came out of nowhere that really made his mark. People say he took out the Justice League when he very first came down, but we got to remember this wasn't the Justice League that we all know and love right now. This was like Justice League, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold. Say what you want about those guys. They weren't a powerhouse.
Right.
You know what I mean? So even though, yes, he did come down and wreck the Justice League and made his way across the U.S. until he encountered Superman, he didn't really encounter really anybody that could even come close to even being in his way until he met old Kal-El. And it was a hell of a battle, man. And a lot of people, it kind of a little messed up because if it hadn't made such a huge pop culture splash and everybody was knowing about it, I mean, the secret was out. You know what I mean? There was no you weren't surprised by reading this, and then all of a sudden, boom. Yep. But it would have been great to have been to see that because everybody is so, ready for Superman to win all the time. It would have been really cool to kind of be surprised and be like, whoa.
Or maybe not like
he's dead.
The title a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Change the title or not have that wrapped up in the black. When it came out, these were black. It came out with a black cover all over it. I mean, it was it was obviously this was for sales. I don't think anybody really believed Superman would be gone for a while, but he was dead for a year's time in real time. You know what I mean? Before they brought him back. But although this was a great story, it was a classic story. And then I think a lot of good things came out of it, of course, with the invention of Superboy was brought back from this. He had been erased pre-crisis or before, during Crisis. And we had Steel, another great character that came out of this as well, referencing the Reign of the Superman that you talked about that, kind of took up after this. No, but it was a great story. It was a great story.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with everything. I was actually going to touch on it, so good job on that. For me, obviously Doomsday being a big part of it. I think the beautiful thing about the death of Superman is the way they're able to portray the effect of Superman not being around in that world. Like you've really felt, the impact from that death, whether it's from Batman or, just citizens of the world and not having this guy around and just how important he is and kind of that heartbeat of almost humanity where it's almost like a safeguard around the world. It's kind of like an Iron Man quote, like a shield of armor around the world. He was that shield of armor for a lot of people.
Did you just quote Marvel during a DC conversation?
I know. No, but I mean, but it's kind of a true analogy, and I just think that they portrayed that beautifully by his death, and then coming through the Reign of Superman. I love the introduction of Superboy and Steel. Yeah. We get Cyborg Superman out, kind of stemming from that, and the Eradicator in Black Suit Superman. I mean, how popular is that now? But it all stemmed from that. So fantastic story, and I say with joy, it's probably I would go to say it's the biggest death in comic book history. being that it
Oh
was
gosh, yes.
Superman by a mile. I mean, even as big as the Robin death was, like Superman dying, like, whoa, you know
That
what I mean? So,
that one was huge, and you said something that was good. A lot of people, or at least I give a lot of credence to the bringing back Superboy and Steel,
yeah,
but you just triggered my mind here and talked about how Cyborg Superman, there was a lot of things that came from him as well. I mean, he's been around
yeah,
now and has become a huge villain, in
yeah.
stories. And I think it was because of him that we had that great Green Lantern. I mean, he,
Oh yeah,
pivoted from there because he destroyed Central. Was it Central?
Central
Central
City.
City, yeah, Central
Yeah,
City, where Hal Jordan was living, and then that made him start to go crazy, which led to his death eventually, with him becoming the Spectre. But there was a lot of great seeds that were planted, I guess, from this Death
yeah.
Superman
Yeah,
storyline. That's what I'm trying to
and
say.
I think it would be, remiss to say too, it was refreshing to see Superman not have to hold back in a fight. Like this is
Yeah,
actually like what Bane is to Batman, where it's just like he can literally he doesn't because a lot of fights Superman holds back because he's a good guy, he doesn't want to kill anybody. But this one, he's letting it all out. You know what I mean? And no matter what he does, Doomsday comes back, more and more. So it was really cool to see that.
yeah.
Um,
And
let's
two good
move.
movies that were made too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
very
the very first animated film that DC ever put out,
yeah.
and then which was really kind of a weird take on it, but then they redid it just a
They
year or so
nailed it.
ago, and they got it great that time.
I
It was good.
I I absolutely love that second, the newest animated.
Yeah,
Like it's really good. Let's move on to some of yours that weren't on my list. Why don't you just kind of go down and kind of break down your four real quick, and we'll just talk about it as you finish
sure.
each one.
So Superman for All Seasons is the one I mentioned first.
Yeah.
This actually was Batman: The Long Halloween. You talked about
Yes.
that.
Yes.
This Batman.
Absolutely.
So this was actually kind of not based on it, but it was kind of like a similar story, because that Long Halloween took was all the different holidays in each month. This
Yeah.
one was a story that was told that dealt with each season,
Right.
and it was really kind of a cool story because it was told from each issue was told from a different point of view.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
kind of his first appearance, also Superman's first appearance in Metropolis, leaving Smallville
Right.
and being in Metropolis.
Yeah.
So like Spring was narrated by Jonathan Kent. That really, the first issue there kind of told the story of him being in Smallville and then him leaving for Metropolis. Summers narrated by Lois Lane. Again, Superman's
Yeah.
first appearance in there. Falls by Lex Luthor, talking to kind of his version
Yeah.
of the story by saying, whoa, 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 I'm the savior of Metropolis, not only Metropolis, but the world. What is this dude doing here? And
Right.
then due to some stuff that happened in the story, it was actually the fourth part of the story was told from Lana Lang's point of
Okay.
view,
Yeah.
and then has to do with him back in Smallville and all of that stuff. So, but it was a really good story. I think to me, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier about when it's a good Superman story. This wasn't. I mean, there wasn't a lot of crazy. I mean, there were some battles, there were some fights.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, it was more along the lines of, first of all, it was his first appearance, but it was really him coming to
Right.
grips with being a hero in this
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And, what every move he makes sometimes has consequences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And things like that. And him coming to terms with carrying this mantle of being Superman, really.
Yeah.
But it was a cool story. Smallville is actually inspired by this.
Yeah.
Was inspired by this story, but yeah, it to me, one negative I would say, and I know it's kind of funny because I have it on my list, the artwork. As much as I
Yeah.
love the story,
Yes.
it's that Norman Rockwell type
Yeah.
of art, or just that Americana type of. And it takes me. I mean, if it wasn't such a great story, it would have taken me out of it. I mean,
You know what? To be honest, that's the reason why it's not on my list. I got introduced to this. Can you imagine if Alex Ross drew that book instead of?
Man.
It would be maybe number one on my list. It really would. But the story itself. So as I mentioned, the Batman story, the Long Halloween's my favorite Batman story. So this immediately drew my interest because I found out it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
One thing they touch on, which is nice, and it's part one of him leaving Smallville and going to Metropolis. That's usually a time frame that a lot of people don't actually touch on. When
Right.
he makes that jump, and it really touches on what was beautifully told in Man of Steel when we hear Kevin Costner tell Clark, like, good or bad, like the man you choose to be is going to impact the world. Like you have to decide who and this story is kind of literally a representation of that quote, because you can imagine the stress and the mantle of having, of that burden being, and it really explains that really well as he kind of forms and decides, who he's going to be and becomes Superman and makes that appearance. So for those reasons, I think it's actually a really well told story and really grounds Superman. We'll move on to another one that involves one of my favorite Superman villains of all time. That's Brainiac. That story is great. So why don't you dive into that one, and then I'll touch on, because Brainiac's fantastic.
Yeah, no, this is an awesome story. There's a couple of big things that happen in this story too. Obviously, one, Superman comes to the realization that he's actually never faced Brainiac. Every time in the past that he faced him, he was facing, it was a version of Brainiac, but not the ultimate one, the all-encompassing, powerful one. But it was kind of a good story because it kind of bridged back to Krypton. There's a couple good flashbacks that are in there. It actually was kind of how Supergirl in the Injustice games, which we've mentioned before, is really kind of terrified of Brainiac. And that really is started in this story, you know what I mean? Or is created given that background of Supergirl and her encounter with Brainiac back on Krypton when he took Kandor. So, she's involved in the story. Other major events are like Jonathan Kent. I believe he actually passes away. I know he passes away in this story too. No, I thought it was a good one because it's actually puts him. I mean, this is it was a 5-issue series, I believe, and it was just awesome because it had him against an adversary the full time. I mean, Brainiac was just a complete badass in this story. Complete badass. And not only that, because this is actually a good mixture of the human heart moments that happen, you know what I mean, of Superman, like we spoke of, with him losing his father and all of that stuff. And then some just great classic set action pieces as well. Yeah. And then Superman Unbound, the animated film, was actually based on this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite versions with Supergirl. I think it's one of my favorite Supergirl kind of moments and stories, as well, as you touched on. Brainiac's really interesting because he's, unlike Doomsday, this isn't like I just need to go in and start smashing stuff enemy. Yeah. He's more of like an Ultron, where he can replicate himself. He's more AI than like an actual being, which is why, he's faced other versions, but it wasn't the true Brainiac. So this is a villain I would really like to see
on screen.
Screen. He would be fantastic. But to your point, we get a lot of the influence of, Pa Kent dying of a heart attack kind of because of Brainiac, the Kandor storyline. And I love how they use like Supergirl being afraid of Brainiac and kind of going back on that flashback when she's on Krypton to see how Kandor was taken, and I thought that was beautifully done. So this is a story I really would like to see in live action. I really would. Yeah. So let's just keep it moving. What's the next one you got? And let's keep talking.
Sure, man. The other one I have is next one I have is For the Man Who Has Everything, which is an awesome story told by Alan Moore, written by him. It came out back in like in the mid '80s at some point. It opens up Wonder Woman, Batman, and Robin, the Jason Todd Robin, are they're landing there at the Fortress of Solitude. They're going to celebrate old Kal-El's birthday. When they get there, unfortunately for him, he's already opened up some gift of some sort, delivered unknowingly by Mongol. You guys know him, if you might know him. He's right up there with Darkseid, right under him, I guess, in terms of brute strength and just being a warlord and all of that stuff. Somebody who can go toe to toe with Superman. But what it was called the Black Mercy, and it was like a parasite that kind of.
It's like a starfish almost.
Yeah, I mean it's wrapped around you, and it's definitely taking you. You're just there, and it's taking your power, but you don't know what's even happening because it's injected you into what you believe is a perfect world. And for Superman, this perfect world is Krypton. Never having been exploded or been destroyed. You know what I mean? So he's living his life. He's got a fantastic family. His father's still alive. He's just living the dream on Krypton. Unknowingly, while this is all going on, while he's in the suspended animation, again, like I said, Superman, Batman, and Robin had all just gotten there, and not Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Robin had just gotten there, and they find him in this state. Mongol's there, and so the whole series, the whole issue is, of course, flashing back to Superman living this dream life, this perfect life for him, and then Wonder Woman and Mongol going at it while Batman and Robin are trying to figure out a way to get the Black Mercy off of him. But no, I remember reading this, and I thought it was an awesome, awesome story. You know what I mean? And then come to find out, it really became Superman having to fight his own way. I mean, he had to choose. He was having everything that he wanted in life. And just knowing that this wasn't real. I mean, it was just a pretty terrible story because he had to leave his for what he's known,
Yeah.
his wife and the son that he's loved forever, and having to go back out, and obviously go back to real life. So it was a pretty terrible story, emotional story, while at the same time giving us that action I spoke about.
Oh yeah, no. Well, a couple of things touch on stuff for that. You don't see Robin in a lot of storylines, so it's really cool. Even though it was Jason, and then maybe not the best Robin, but it was cool to see Robin involved in a Superman story, which is a rare sight because usually it's just a Holy Trinity. When it's like a group. But Mongol not used too much, but I don't know why because he's great. I thought the storyline was great of showing to kind of the sacrifice move that Superman's willing to make at all times, and that's kind of a good way to ground him is give him kind of some gut-wrenching decisions where he kind of has to sacrifice something of himself to better humanity, which is a very well done throughout the storyline where how hard it would be to leave your perfect life to realize it's not real and better humanity. And how many times do we go through storylines where at the end of the day, like it comes down to just soups at the end, you know what I mean, to make this big decision or make the big move.
Yeah.
And it was a great one. So fantastic choice. This was probably like this story and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow are like the two that were the closest to being on my list. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
They actually retold it twice. Once in Justice League. They had a version of that in Justice League, and then Supergirl, of course, lifted it, and they used it in the television show Supergirl. But no, and actually, real quick, of all the powerhouses that are around him, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, the one thing I will give Jason Todd some props. He's actually the one who actually wins the day. He was able to get that. Lots of stuff happened. He's got the Black Mercy. He's able to get a little Mongol, and that ends the story.
I'll even put on there that might be Jason's crowning moment as Robin that he ever did.
Right.
It might be. I mean,
very well true.
It might be his crowning Robin moment. So thank you, Jason, for that one. I guess we have one more on your end. What was the final one?
The last one for me, man, is Man of Steel that I mentioned. This one was actually came out in 1986, this started the storyline over after Crisis on Infinite Earths. This was the reboot, which did the retell of his origin and just his making an appearance and all of that. Which is really known for a lot. I mean, it was really cool to see that, of course, and come back. But they did a couple of things. They actually depowered Superman, and he has kind of remained this way ever since. You know what I mean? Before pre-Crisis, he was able to actually move. Yeah. He could fly up and pick up a planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he could juggle planets or whatever.
Right.
So he's been depowered ever since. So which is kind of makes it slightly more relatable to it. But also it brought back Jonathan and Martha Kent. Yes. Which they've been around, obviously, until the heart attack or what have you. Right. And then they brought back or eliminated Superboy. Right. And they also, so there was no more Superboy because from this Man of Steel, in this origin, retelling this, there was no adventure, him being growing up and doing it in Smallville, performing feats as Superboy. He didn't become Superman until after he left, which is still kind of what's been remained. They're kind of like Superboy from existence ever since then. Besides the other Superboy, that's a totally different person. And then this is also, which I think was a fantastic move, and they've kind of stuck with every now and then back. They made him Lex Luthor, a respected businessman in this. This is where the tycoon, the wealthiness and all of that coming before all of this. He has been that mad scientist running around, you know what I mean, and all of that. So I think that they did a couple of good things with this reboot, and it was just a great story, which has kind of carried on ever since. No, I actually own the one of the original comics. It's like got the big, the close up pull out, so it's really cool. But to your point, I was going to touch on was Lex. I think what they did with him was beautiful. He was just kind of your typical stereotypical bad guy before this was done. And really this was the birth of the modern Superman, which is pretty much all I've known. You know what I mean? Where, and I like what, the Pa Kent and Ma Kent, I like when they're around. I like him having a family because they really pull him back to humanity as Lois does and really brings out the human aspect of him. So I love that. They definitely did. I think that was their huge things. They made him, gave him more family because before that he was just him. Nobody even knew who he was. They definitely were able to tell better stories with these characters around. Yeah. So, your 5 are fantastic. I mean,
Bravo to you. I'm
Thank you,
gonna flip it
sir.
over to my end. I'm gonna start with Superman Red Sun, which was 2003. It was a 3-issue series. This is a very Elseworld story. So obviously we know the rocket ship landed in Kansas. Ma Pa Camp. This one, he actually Superman's rocket lands in the Soviet Union. Especially at the height of kind of the Soviet Union, and but what would Superman be like if he was Russian at the Cold War time? So it's a very unique story. It was written by Mark Millar, I believe is his name. It's been adapted into animated movie that just came out recently.
Yeah.
We get like a fur hat wearing Batman, and it's just a really cool story, Elseworld story. I would say of the Elseworld Superman stories, this is probably the crown jewel of those. And it's a really cool, just different take on this character on like what if he wasn't this farm boy from Kansas, but was actually brought up by these communists and things like that to, it didn't have kind of these Boy Scout qualities. So it's really him. It's really him pulling on what's right and what's wrong, and you really see that evolution of that character as the story goes.
Yeah, I think it added a lot to it because I mean, didn't they? I mean, he's still, at least when I first went into it, I remember thinking that it was going to be because he was raised in Russia that he was going to be like some completely
Yeah, like
evil
backwards, right? He's
guy.
not really that. Yeah,
No, he's not. And I thought that was what was a great, not twist, but
yeah.
I just thought that made the
Yeah.
story a lot better.
It's
That
like
he's
no
still,
matter how
no
much
matter who,
bad is around him, like he's still the light still
says that
shines through. Yeah,
exactly, and
yeah,
that's what I liked about it a lot. So, and I like the
exactly.
fact that the old Bruce Wayne is, he like you mentioned, that was kind of a nice little twist on him
Yeah,
as well. They gave the other characters around him peripherally
yeah,
nice little twists.
and Wonder Woman as well. She gets a
Yep.
nice piece of action. So
Yeah.
that was my first one. The next one is actually a pretty recent. It was actually in 2013. Geoff Johns, The Last Son of Krypton. A lot of people would just assume that this is just Superman, the last son of Krypton. That's actually not the case. He finds this child that is a survivor of Krypton, and he kind of raises him and plans to adopt him and show him, right from wrong. And come to find out, it is the son of old General Zod, and really it's cool because it's probably my favorite General Zod and Superman battle because it's not for the fate of the world; it's actually the fate of this child. So it's a very cool take on a Zod Superman story, which are maybe my favorite just because they're so similar. They can go toe to toe. They're both from Krypton, and it's like this battle between this home that he wishes that was still around, and yet this bad guy. And Zod to me is really relatable because you can actually understand like what his purpose is. Like you see what his mission is for Krypton at the end of the day, and it's his child. So it's a really cool take. I thought Geoff Johns did a really good job, and it's one of the newer stories, but it was worthy on being my top 5 list. If you haven't checked the story out, it's very, very good.
No, and I think that was the first time that kind of gave Zod, maybe I don't know about the first time, but it kind of gave him or at least demonstrated that he's not just an evil guy to be
No,
evil. His
no,
whole thing is to preserve, as you mentioned,
exactly.
preserve Krypton. You know
Yeah,
what I mean, and do whatever he can to maintain that.
yeah,
And so that's really what it all is. And I liked that version of it.
yeah. I actually think it's relatable. You get what he's not just being bad to be bad. Like you're like,
Yeah.
oh, like I get what this guy's trying to do, and yet you understand Superman. I can't let this. You can't just wipe everything out.
Right.
For Krypton. So it's really, but the fact that they kind of twisted it into the fate of the child instead of the world was really, really refreshing, and kind of a twist too when you're like, oh snap, like that is not just a regular you're kind of thinking like, oh, it might be like a Supergirl thing or something like that. Woo, you're like, oh, that's a bad boy right there. That's
Oh yeah.
So really cool. The next one is a very iconic story, especially for, I would say, maybe the most iconic artwork in a story comic book, and that's the Kingdom Come story, 1996. Beautifully done by Alex Ross. I mean, you literally don't have to read the story. You can just flip through the pages and look at the artwork, and you'll just be blown away. It's also kind of an Elseworld story where Superman's a lot older. Like I said, there's a lot of characters involved, but he's really the heartbeat, where there's like these new up and coming superheroes. They're not exactly living the exact superhero lifestyle where they're doing all the right things and protecting humanity, to the point where Superman kind of has to come out of dust the old cape off and suit back up in the iconic Kingdom Come suit with the black symbol, and kind of this old wave of legends of superheroes to come back and fight the newer superheroes and show them, how things are supposed to be done. So it is a really cool story. I'm actually really surprised there hasn't. I mean, there's been, I guess, some variations of an animated film, but I'm actually surprised this hasn't been like a full blown like Kingdom Come animated film or even a live action film, because this one is just it's an unbelievable story.
I'm surprised too, but at the same time, what's kind of cool is that we've got lots of fantastic stories that have yet to have been adapted yet. That I of, because I get so mad about thinking, how come they haven't done this one yet? But I'm like, you know what? It'll be there. That'll be there. Crisis will be there. But anyway, not to go. But no, I also thought Kingdom Come was a fantastic story. Also, I really did. I do like the fact where he's kind of retired, and then, like you said, has to come back and kind of whip these other guys into shape because their super heroics are, for the guys who ever read this, they're almost like kind of like, if you've seen The Boys on Amazon Prime, that might be a good way to just interpret how these heroes have become.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? More along the lines of kind of out for themselves. They'll save some people, but we're more interested in making some money or doing whatever. So no, great. I think notable also for Red Robin's first. I mean, that's where they got Red Robin from, who later comes down and or Tim Drake becomes him. One of his Batman stories.
Very, very well said. Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool too. It's one of those stories again where they're using kind of the symbol of Superman of this is what a superhero should be. You know what I mean? And it takes him to kind of be that example. So, absolutely. And then the final one is my personal favorite one. Actually, it's All-Star Superman. There's no better way to humanize the unkillable, just immortal Superman than the dude's got a year to live. This is really a story by Grant Morrison in 2005, where basically Superman's on a mission. He soaks in a little too much radiation into his body and is told that he has 1 year to live. So he basically uses that year to do absolutely everything he can to do as much good in the world as possible. And it's really an amazing story because it's, basically a god coming to grips with the fact that his life's ending and what is his footprint on the world going to be and what is he going to do with that time remaining. There's some really heartfelt moments with like him and Lois, he kind of reveals, who he is and what he wanted. And at the end of the day, his love for her and shows there's a lot of humanistic moments, within that storyline that I think was very well told. And it's just, to me, there's just no better way to really bring him down to earth and humanize him to just, from the get-go, like, hey, this dude's dying, and what is he going to do with that time remaining? So, very good story.
Now, I thought it was a great story also. I am surprised, though, that it's on your list because the reason is because the artwork to me is very reminiscent of the fall seasons. You know what I mean? So that, at least that's what it reminded me of a lot.
The animated film helped.
I was about to say they did an animated film out of it. And the stories were also pretty, they were just really more of a, if I remember correctly, each really, not to use
like a diary.
Fantastic. Well, a diary, but some of the stories that were told were also not your typical Superman story. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? There was a lot of odd.
Like there was like a reptile kind of invasion kind of attack at one point.
But I mean, it was a great story. You know what I mean? Fantastic story throughout the that miniseries. But it was just different.
Actually, I looking back, the one thing I would change is I like what the vision of it, but I wish it would have been like Zod or Doomsday, or let him go out with one of or Lex, even just a big Lex story. Like it was just kind of some different characters. You're like, but at the end of the day, it's him, at the end, kind of, saving the world one last time, and it's cool.
And I guess that what makes it a good Superman story when at the end of the day, because it's really all about him, you know what I mean, and him dealing with everything and what he's going through, and for this Superman to be able to finally deal with his mortality. The fact that he's going away, dying.
I guess so. That's like our story. So we'd love to hear you guys. I guess another thing on Superman I would love to ask you is, what it's always been like, because he's been around so long and there's been so many different. What's your favorite version of Superman over the years, whether it's been in a movie or a comic book? And really, what where does Superman kind of? We've talked about like our rankings of superheroes, but like, what is Superman to you? In the realm of superheroes.
Um, I will say that I think the Superman animated series to me probably first
Yeah.
captured, without being super corny. You know what I mean? First captured a real good, portrayal of Superman, and so I kind of liked that animated version as much as I like the Christopher Reeves and all of that stuff. There's there's a little bit of a corniness factor to him, you know, in my opinion.
No,
even as a kid watching it, I picked up on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was just a little bit to it. So I think that for me, that animated cartoon was the first one that kind of put it out there for me, that captured Superman that I, in that form.
Yeah, it was. I was introduced to that show too, and that was really my introduction, really, to Superman. Right around the time, I would say it's not as good as the Batman animated series by any means. It's a very good show, but they did a good job. I've really actually enjoyed the last couple years of what DC's universe animated films. That version of Superman, I guess, since Justice League War up until Justice League Apocalypse War, I think they actually nailed Superman better than I've seen him be portrayed before. I just love that version. So I'm actually kind of sad that version kind of ended, and we're going to get, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow coming into kind of this retelling of this story. And, we've talked about the animation a little bit, but it does look really good. So I'm really excited to see what they do with him. And, we've talked, he's always been the bar. So it should be interesting.
So the New 52 version. Kind of for you, what really, okay, that's cool. And by the way, I'm a fan of it too. I definitely am of that as well. So that's cool though. Very cool. I think both really do a good job of kind of capturing that,
Yeah, I think, as time gone on too, I think, writers and stuff have kind of realized like what works for Superman, and the way to ground him as they've pulled him back has actually done a lot. So the New 52 really did a good job of kind of setting that up. And we've seen him get his butt kicked a couple times. We've seen him deal with personal struggles and having a family and doing all these things. And we've talked about, I love when him and Batman, that relationship that they really showed in New where they're really best friends. Like, it's not I'm going to fight you and let's get a kryptonite ring. Like, they're best friend. I think, even up until the wedding, Superman was going to be Batman's best man. You know what I mean? And I love that dynamic of those two. And the New 52 also has the Wonder Woman Superman relationship, which is a little different, which is I'm not sure. Like, I get it and I love it, but I think that Lois brings the human aspect of Clark out, so I prefer the Lois. But it does make sense, I guess, of the two. Like, they're so different. Like, they're kind of two shooting stars in a galaxy. So why not? Together,
which I think I totally get it too, and I think that relationship does make sense. But that's since been retconned, and now he's back with Lois, because I think I like Lois. Yeah, I do too. And that was just real quick introduction. Is that it was kind of funny to see how when the animated cartoons, the New 52 started off as, or the animated cartoons when they revamped, also they were basing themselves off of the New 52. And since they were putting themselves out, the New 52 then got revamped again. You know what I mean? But the animated cartoon kind of slowly disintegrated disintegrated the Wonder Woman relationship, and kind of right at the end brought in Lois. You know what I mean? Right at the end, before it's all over now because of the Dark Side Apocalypse. But it's just I'd be curious to see what they do next. But no, it was I like that version.
Yeah, it started with the you're strong, I know, and then then you see at the end more their best friend. They even joke like our relationship, it was good, kind of like we had, like I don't think I could have been that girl. So they joke about it, which is cool. But anyways, that's enough about the Man of Steel. Let us know what you guys think. What are your favorite Superman stories? What about Superman is special? And it's same for Batman. We'd love to hear all your comments and what you guys think. But hit that subscribe button. Check out the website, www.comiccollectorsguild.com. Let us know any topics that you would like me and Lee to discuss. We are always open to new ideas, and we can't wait to bring more content. Sir, it has been fun talking about me.
It indeed has, my friend. I enjoyed it.
All right, Diggs. Well, thank you so much, guys. Until next time, keep hunting, and we'll be back next week.
Sup, Soups?
Wow, it's Batman, and he's at my house right now. What are you doing here?
Don't worry about it, dog. I'm not here to throw down or anything.
No, I would crush you.
Okay, sure.